Hey everyone, back here today to talk about something that we experience and work with in our clinics all the time, and that is binge eating disorder. For some of our clients, they refer to it as emotional eating or food addiction or sugar addiction. And for some of our clients, they are meeting more of a diagnostic criteria for binge eating, which has to do with the amount of foods over the particular times that someone is consuming them, and then also with frequency, right? So how frequently that's happening in a week or in a month. For other people, they don't really meet that diagnostic binge criteria, but they are resonating with other characteristics of that eating disorder, which have to do with feeling a lack of control around how they're eating, or the guilt and shame that comes from the food choices that they're making or how they're feeling after they're eating. So that is really what we want to address in this video today. And so from a clinical perspective, one of the most important things as clinicians that we need to do to address for someone who's managing binge eating or emotional eating is to understand that for many people, eating and food are an extremely powerful coping mechanism for dealing with really, really strong or intense emotional experiences, including trauma, anxiety, depression, loneliness. Food can sometimes be an extremely potent and effective coping strategy for dealing with those emotions. And so as clinicians, we really have to understand, recognize, and accept and respect that that's where that person is at, and give them full unconditional permission to utilize food as a coping strategy, no matter what their body size is, no matter what their health is, while they're also concurrently in therapy working on better strategies. So that's the first thing we have to address as clinicians is understanding that food actually oftentimes can be a less risky coping strategy than some other more self-harm related or more destructive coping behavior. So that's first and foremost. And then the second thing we really have to understand when it comes to someone's overall eating pattern who's dealing with binge eating, emotional eating, is really what we think of as planned eating and unplanned eating. And so planned eating is often what we think of as the food choices that we're making and the way that we're nourishing ourselves intentionally throughout the day. And then the unplanned eating is really what we think of as unintentional choices. Often they feel very impulsive or compulsive, or they feel like they're not really in the presence of hunger signals, or they may be in the presence of extremely strong hunger signals. So we have to understand that these two places throughout the day, your planned eating and your unplanned eating, are extremely interlinked, interwoven. And so one of the ways that I try to explain this to our clients is to use the analogy or the metaphor of a pendulum. And so in the case of binge eating, unplanned eating, emotional eating, we have to really look critically at somebody's overall pattern of eating to see, are there places where they are pulling a pendulum back? And the behaviors that we look for, or the planned eating behaviors that we look for to see is someone pulling a pendulum back, are food choices that might be related to eliminating food groups, eliminating whole meals, so maybe skipping a breakfast or working through lunch, or otherwise trying not to eat until later in the day. They may be choosing smaller portions of things. They may be choosing the healthier option on a menu as opposed to what they really want. And so as clinicians, we see all of these little acts as pulling back a pendulum of little baby restrictive practices and sometimes larger restrictive practices. And once that pendulum is pulled back, the only thing that's holding it in place is someone's willpower. So their mental energy of keeping that pendulum in place. And the problem is that willpower, as we know, is finite. It only lasts for so long. And the moment that there is maybe a blip in someone's routine, and I say blip, maybe it's something smaller, maybe it's something big, like moving to a new city or another gym, or losing their gym membership, or really other things that might be happening in their personal life. Or if they are maybe relaxing and going on vacation, or potentially if they just are feeling really stressed or emotional. All these things kind of wear down willpower, and then the only thing left to do is let go. And so when we let go, we can think about that pendulum swinging into the other side. And so all of these planned eating restrictions, or these little ways that we've cut back or held back on ourselves, are swinging to this other side of unplanned eating. And that is where we typically see food choices that we don't normally make, or things that we think of as not healthy that we're including when we would never include them. It might be where we are feeling like we're eating past fullness into physical discomfort or even illness. And that is usually a place where the biological drive to restore the calories that you had kind of held back on in this more restrictive place, the body is now putting forth really, really strong energy towards consuming not just the calories that you need for this particular day that you are experiencing this unplanned eating, but also the backlog of nutrition that you've been holding back on through these other restrictive practices. And so these feelings of unplanned eating can feel extremely intense, and one of the reasons you're feeling so uncomfortable is because your digestive system does have trouble managing all of that food intake that the body is trying to get you to make up for what was lost. And so what unfortunately happens is this starts to set up a really vicious cycle, because the way that we feel on this unplanned eating side and the guilt and the discomfort that we feel often lead to us going back into restrictive practices to make up what was lost, make up for the way that we were eating when we were binging. And so all that leads to is pulling back the pendulum again, and then willpower is at play again, holding on as long as it can until eventually we let go again. And so when we start to understand that relationship, or the swing back and forth, we start to really be able to be more curious about our food decisions and more curious about the ways that we're engaging in unplanned eating. And we start to be able to look back throughout the day or through the week and really critically look at our food patterns and start to figure out where things might be going kind of off from what your body really physically needs. And so as clinicians, what we want to work on is getting you closer to meeting that center of the pendulum, getting your nutrition needs met so that your swings are much less severe, and that overall those feelings around physical and emotional discomfort start to reduce around food. So I hope that helps you with understanding why sometimes we have really strong unplanned eating behaviors. And if you feel like this resonates, I highly recommend meeting with a professional, nutrition professional, calling the Calm Clinic if you're in a location that we can provide you care, and start taking on the overall eating pattern as opposed to just those particular food choices on that tough day, tough night, whatever it looks like. So I wish you the best on your food journey. I hope we hear from you, and take care until the next one.